Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you all for being here. It's Saturday night, and I hope you guys are having a great weekend, whatever's going on in your world. Hopefully, the weather is embracing you and you're doing some outside stuff, I guess. But we've got a phenomenal show lined up for you guys tonight, and this is an exciting one because, of course, joining me tonight is a couple people, actually. One of which is the first branch on my family tree, Mr. Sheldon Thomas, and the other in his debut appearance on the Paranormal Portal. We are welcoming Mr. Which button? There we go. This is my first rodeo. Mr. Wes Germer, ladies and gentlemen of Sasquatch Chronicles, is joining us yet tonight. So, how you guys doing tonight?
Doing well.
Fantastic.
Thanks for having me, man.
Oh, dude, you're always welcome. I'm just glad we were able to dial this in and get you here. This is fantastic.
I was going to impress you with my green screen, but
I'm impressed.
I'm still working on it. It's a work in progress.
I think you should use that logo more often on your shows and stuff too.
I bet.
It looks good on you. I'm just saying. But thanks for being here, man. We're gonna have an epic discussion tonight, ladies and gentlemen, about remote viewing and psychic spying, especially during the height of the Cold War, and how it was heavily implemented in the CIA and in government circles and internationally. Like there was a lot of this stuff going on, and it's an incredible series of events and stories and narratives that are behind all of this. And I gotta tell you, I really hadn't dug into this too deeply until Wes said, hey, we should do this on the show tomorrow. I'm like, you know what? That's phenomenal. And so we've talked about it. We've been working on it all day and have some amazing stuff to bring you guys. So I know you're going to love this, but I didn't realize, I guess, how deep the rabbit hole goes here. This is pretty incredible, Wes.
Thanks.
I'm sorry.
Thanks. I put a lot of work into it.
Yeah, you did, man.
No, I didn't have anything to do with that documentary. Did my thing not come back?
No, I don't see your camera. Oh, there you come. There you are.
Oh, there we go. I had a little issue with sorry about that, everyone. I was fascinated by the whole thing. I thought it was really, when you say remote viewing or people go, well, I astral projected to like Superman. I'm just like, I just call BS on it. But after watching this, it was very different. Watching these guys, these scientists, men that are a million times more smarter than I am. And they did it in a very scientific way. They even had and I never thought about this before, a statistician, I guess is what you would call it. But she, so they would give these guys a place to, like, coordinates to go look for, and then tell us what you're seeing, and they'll write down what they're seeing. And she was saying that at that time when this program was going on, this Project Stargate, that if you would have a better chances of winning the lottery than you would the coincidences that they had with the program. So, and I pulled a bunch of clips that I know we're going to play tonight, and it's a group of characters, that's for sure.
Yeah, and ladies and gentlemen, you guys might be familiar with the concept because it was kind of satirized a little bit and dramatized in the Men Who Stare at Goats movie. Isn't that what it was called, Wes?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that was a fun movie, kind of weird and bizarre, but I guess the funny thing about it is I was aware of this. I mean, I'd heard of it before, but it was always kind of discarded. Like, oh yeah, that was something they played with, but only had. I mean, as far as public opinion was concerned, as far as I knew, it was always just kind of discarded. Like, yeah, they were just playing around with that stuff. Kind of like they gave them a new set of Legos and they were just building stuff, and then just got sick of it and stopped. But that wasn't really the case at all.
No, I think that the movie, while it was entertaining, I think it takes a lot away from what was actually going on. I think when you watch, it's been years since I've seen that movie, but when you watch that movie, have you seen that, Sheldon? The Men That Stare at Goats?
I haven't, actually.
It's like a bunch of stoners that are in the military or working for the government, and they're just kind of sitting around, one of the guys had made the comment. He goes, I don't remember us ever killing any goats or having goats fall over. So yeah, it is. And when you really, for the audience out there, if you have Amazon, go watch it. Project Stargate. Fascinating. And it's 2 hours, but I'm telling you, by the end of it, you'll walk away and go, I kind of believe this.
Yeah, I mean, me too. And that's what in watching that myself today and then researching it more throughout the day, it was like, I had no idea the profound level of results that they had. And I also heard it mentioned, I think it was on the Lowe Files or whatever, Rob Lowe's TV endeavor with his sons, where they did a bunch of paranormal stuff. And one of the things they did was go to the training where one of those trainers is still conducting training sessions, teaching people to do it. And it seemed, and I know that's the problem with TV shows. You never know how much of this actually happened as they're showing it and how much of this is just creative editing. But it seemed like they had really surprising results.
Yeah. What did you think of it, Sheldon?
I thought it was massively. It's one of those things that when you hear it and you take it at face value, that people can see places and see buildings and describe them from the inside without having any prior knowledge, being able to describe that accurately. It sounds pretty nuts, but when you watch the documentary, it builds itself layer by layer by layer until it's like, it doesn't seem like you can deny it at this point, especially with the government being involved with the CIA and whatnot.
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to play some of those clips I sent you, Brent, but sure. There's a really, it's in the movie. I didn't get a clip of it, but it's where this guy went in and he was basically going to debunk the whole thing. He was a skeptic and he was like, this is nonsense. And he was going to quit the program. What happened, and you guys just watch it so you know what happened, but he shows up to work one day and one of the guys in charge goes, give us the coordinates of a place, see what we can do. And this is what, late 70s, early 80s. There's no Google. I don't even know how you would even look up coordinates back then, besides pulling out a map. And so he gives them the coordinates, but the coordinates he gives them, he goes, they'll never guess this. And it was a cabin he just bought out in the middle of nowhere. And so he leaves that day. And when he comes back the next day, the remote viewer has all of this stuff. I mean, details of this huge structure, looks like a military base. There's a long driveway. You go down this driveway, there's a guard shack. They describe what the guard looks like. He has an M16, high security. He's describing everything. Goes down to 4 floors. Actually, you know what? I might have that in the clip. I'll just shut my mouth right now.
Okay.
But yeah, I think I actually have that in the clip. But my jaw dropped when, at that point, I think it was towards the end when he was talking about that.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll open.
Nothing like being big for the audience. Like,
it's all
what's this guy going on about?
Building suspense. That's what we're doing here, Wes. So I'll tell you, there's one clip that I did want to open with, if you don't mind, and this is a quote from the movie that I watched, and it was a quote by Ingo Swann, who is one of the top researchers or top seers, remote viewers. I thought this was really fascinating because it is very esoteric thinking that was really embraced in all of this. And you wouldn't expect that in any government programming, but it was really what you might hear in any like going over and meditating over in India or something. So let's check this out.
A major one of these was the separation of consciousness from the body, which was very real when I was a child. This kind of thing happens in art. I believe, and always have believed, and I return to it many times in my life, that I am not this body in terms of consciousness, and consciousness can go places where the body cannot.
I don't think there's sound, Brent.
No, there wasn't for you guys because it goes. You're getting the Skype feed, but they're getting it on YouTube. So yeah, and basically what he was talking about was separating the consciousness from his body and how his consciousness could travel in places that his body never could, and how he knew that from a young age, and I thought that was so profound.
Yeah, it is profound. And that gentleman, I have a long clip from him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's a damaged soul, in my opinion.
Yeah.
He's had some hard times in his life, but you know what? He's pretty amazing. I mean, it was really, how do you pronounce his name? Ingo?
Ingo.
Yeah.
Ingo Swan.
Ingo Swan, yeah. Look at some of his artwork that he does.
Mm-hmm.
And I should have sent you some. Maybe I'll do it on break. I got some really cool pictures I meant to send you. Sorry, everyone. I've been running like nonstop. So.
Oh no, it's fine. This is our the amount of multimedia in this show so far is already way above the Paranormal Portal norm. So that's just showing.
I spent 10 hours working on this thing.
You recreated it perfectly. I'm just so impressed. I'll send you a T-shirt. But what was I going to say? That's for you and Sheldon West. You're not going to probably hear these clips, but if you want during the course of them, you could probably turn on your YouTube feed and mute your mic, and you can follow along. That way you'll know. But what was I going to say? There was something else I was going to say. I don't remember. It's gone.
Well, I was going to say that isn't the idea of what he's talking about, isn't that essentially some form of astral projection?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I think that's what all of this is. I think it's these guys had a program to basically learn to effectively astral project. And I think you're absolutely right, Sheldon. Yep. Very interesting stuff. And ladies and gentlemen, again, it's maybe kind of awkward to hear such things, but I believe wholeheartedly that we do this kind of stuff subconsciously, perhaps when we're dreaming, probably all the time, and we just don't know what's going on. So I don't think that's too far of a stretch.
No. Yeah, and I have a great clip to play later, but for some people, for probably most people that are listening to this going, this is BS. I mean, that's what I would be doing if I hadn't really looked into this.
Sure.
If you get it, that one, it's Punthoff. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Punthoff, I think. Yeah.
Punthoff, the doctor. It's 9 minutes long, but he kind of gives you how this whole program started, and he has a very, very impressive career in education. Mm-hmm. But he talks about how the whole project started, and unless you got another clip, that one might be good to start off with because it kind of gives a foundation.
Okay, well, let's go to that, ladies and gentlemen. Buckle up. Clip number 2 on the Paranormal Portal.
This program began in 1972, and I'm going to begin with a history of the program just to give you some perspective on exactly what the conditions are in which it started. Historically, it was a top secret, what's called Special Access Program, and SAP. Special Access Program means that even if someone has a top secret clearance, they may not necessarily have access to the program. It's covered by various code words: Grill Flame, Sunstreak, Stargate. These are some of the names. So unless you were on a list to have access to these code word materials, you did not get access just because you had a top secret clearance. At the present time, a third of the program is still classified, but a declassification program started in July of 1995. At that point, the CIA part of the program, which is where it started, declassified the 3 years that they were the prime client, giving both the history and the actual material that's available to you through FOIA. In September of 1995, there was an unclassified history of the program that covered from 72 to 95 that was published as part of a CIA-funded American Institutes for Research study. Now, that part of the program did not declassify the actual contents of much of the program, but just the history of the program. To date, 73,500 pages of formerly classified material have been released. Another 17,000 pages are still denied, and 20,800 pages are in review. You can actually go to the National Archives in Washington, D.C., which I've done, and you can ask them for a CD. They won't give it to you, but they will put it into a computer, and you can scan the files, and if you see something you want to learn about, you can actually print it out and then leave with it. Those of us that have been deeply involved in the program are doing what we can to see if we can't get the CDs actually released so that people can use them at home or wherever. Perhaps one of the most paranormal aspects of the program is that it ever got started at a place like SRI. This entire complex you see here is SRI. At the time, 1972, they were doing about $350 million worth of business, much of it for the government. Originally, it was part of Stanford University, but with the student riots and recognizing that there was classified material being handled at SRI, which the students didn't like when it was part of Stanford University, they got a divorce, and SRI paid Stanford University alimony and agreed to drop Stanford in its title. So Stanford Research Institute is now just called SRI International. Now, the way the program got started, I had been at Stanford and working on lasers, quantum electronics. I had just completed a textbook with a co-author there and on lasers and quantum electronics. And as is always the case, there's nothing like writing a book to realize there's a lot of stuff you don't know. And one of the things I realized I didn't know was whether quantum physics could ever apply to human consciousness, for example. And so I proposed a very modest program and circulated around a proposal to begin to explore quantum aspects of human processing. And a copy of that proposal ended up on a desk in New York. Somebody looked at it. And it turned out that Ingo Swann, who you'll hear more about in this conference and who will be presenting in this conference, happened to see a copy of my proposal. And so he wrote me a letter, and he said, look, if you're interested in quantum physics and consciousness, you shouldn't be working with algae, which is what my proposal had to do with, because they can't tell you anything. You should be working with someone like me. You should be working with psychics. Well, actually, I'd never thought of that. At that point, I'd never even bought a copy of Fate magazine. But along with his letter, he provided some material that indicated that he had successfully done some psychokinesis work at City College in New York. And as a physicist, that interested me. So I invited him to come out to SRI and see what he could do. This is one of his paintings. He's really quite a well-known artist, and his paintings often appear on covers of magazines, or have, and on the covers of books. This is called Airship's View of Sagittarius. Right now it's at the National Air and Space Museum of the Smithsonian. That's Ingo on the right, as we looked in 1972. So he agreed to come out. I agreed to have him come out. And I started talking to my physics friends about, well, what kind of experiment should we do? And of course, all my cynical physicist friends said, well, you know, these guys are all frauds and charlatans. You better really have something good or you're going to get snookered. So I looked around to try to find something that would be good, and what I finally came up with was a shielded magnetometer. It's basically a very high-tech compass needle, but its claim to fame was that it was buried in the floor of a building, surrounded by electrostatic copper shielding, surrounded by mu metal magnetic shielding, surrounded by superconducting shielding. It was a device to look for quarks, fundamental particles, and its claim to fame was that it was totally imperturbable from the outside. So I took Ingo over there and said, I'd like for you to perturb this device. He said, where is it? Well, it's down there under the floor inside that superconducting shielding. And so he asked, well, how will I know if I'm successful? So we showed him a printout that was generally being generated, and it would go up and down about once a minute, and that's how it runs standardly. And so I said, well, I'd like for you to perturb it. So he said, well, first I have to see what's in there. And he began drawing and describing what he saw down inside there. And as he did so, we saw this effect. And I said, how'd you do that? He said, I didn't do anything. I just looked at it. I said, well, look at it again. And then this effect occurred. And of course, a graduate student whose thesis depended on this said, stop, there must be something wrong with my... So we talked on other subjects and kind of looked around and thought about other things. And a few more cycles came out. And so he said, well, why don't you look in there again? And then that's what happened. The graduate student said, well, you know, I think something is wrong. Why don't you guys just go away? Leave me alone for a half hour. So I got to look and see what's the problem here. And so that's how it generated for the next 20 or 30 minutes or so. And then we said, okay, why don't you look in there again? And bingo. That's what happened. Poor graduate student about ready to tear his hair out. He says, I want you guys out of my lab. I've got to take some more data to find out what's happening here. And so he ran for hours, and there was no other perturbation. So I thought this was pretty interesting, and actually it's pretty interesting that he could seemingly describe what was in there, because in fact the innards of this device had never been published anywhere. So I wrote this up and circulated it around, and after a couple of weeks, the CIA landed on my doorstep and said, have we been looking for you? And I said, well, what did I do? He said, well, you did this experiment. And our problem is that we have data indicating that the Soviets, that's what we called them at the time, the Soviets, are spending millions of dollars a year on this stuff. They've got some of the best institutes and the best PhDs working on it. And nobody in America even believes there is such a thing. So we don't know how to evaluate this. Do you think you could have him come out and, sort of demonstrate this to us? We'd like to really see if this really, there's something to it. We couldn't care less about the psychokinesis, but we're really interested in this, what we now call remote viewing aspect, the fact that he could see inside here.
Wow. That is so profound.
Yeah, did you get what he was saying there about how he was able to look down? This was like below concrete, had all that shielding on it, and he's describing it. And when he says perturb it, I think he goes, hey, mess with it.
Yeah.
And that's what he was doing. And you can actually they show it in the movie, but every time this guy was interacting with this Ingo, I keep pronouncing his name wrong. Is that how he said Ingo?
Yeah, that's
Ingo.
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ingo. Every time he would mess with it, you would see the meter on the thing go off. And you can actually look that up. I mean, how do you fake something like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was actually interfacing with it and causing a distinct interruption to it or fluctuation. I think that's incredible, because it is a way to quantify that this stuff really does happen, and to repeat it and only upon, doing the experiment was it actually having a fluctuation. I mean, that's solid. That's rock solid. That's repeatable and provable.
It shows, that it can be measured. And if it can be measured, then something's going on.
Right. And see, that's what's so interesting, is that I guess that's what surprised me so much about all of this is the amount of investment that actually takes place into this stuff. But still on the surface, they would scoff or make it seem like a ridiculous thing, even though under the guise of cover of the deep state or whatever, it was just being incubated and developed and pursued to such a profound degree. And the other part that I thought was actually tragic was that these viewers actually became targets. And I thought, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you read through the documents, you can read through a lot of them online, and I just put out like a major fire. Otherwise, I'd been more prepared. But as you read through the documents, the CIA wants to know. They were getting into weird stuff. Could you harm someone? Could you choke someone? Could you kill someone in that state? And if it's BS, they're gonna maybe mess with it for 6 months and go, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
That's 20 years. And not only did the CIA have this program, the Air Force had this program, the DoD had this program, the NSA had this every section of our government is and if you get a chance, read through the documents because they are fascinating. The other guy I sent you, I can't remember which one it was. The Joseph guy is pretty fascinating. The Russell Targ, I like that Targ guy.
Yeah.
He kind of describes a little bit of the process, and he shows you a little bit more of the evidence as far as what they were coming across and kind of how they were testing it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's check that out and see what's going on with Russell. I think he was in both. He was in the video that I watched as well. Just a very intriguing guy and just fascinating. But here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We'll check out the next clip. Oops.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. My name is Russell Targ, and I'm a physicist. And it's my great pleasure to tell you about the remarkable work we did at Stanford Research Institute investigating psychic abilities. We did that for the CIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, NASA, and many, many other intelligence agencies, part of the U.S. government intelligence system. I got into all this as a childhood magician, standing on the stage in New York doing mental magic. And I had the experience from time to time of having a direct perception of something in the life stream of the person whose mind I was pretending to read or whose fortune I was pretending to tell. So I was not a real psychic. I was just a kid doing magic. But I've now talked to people like Kreskin and Melbourne Christopher, and they said, oh yes, every professional magician knows that from time to time you're given some material and you can then supplement your magic trick with whatever ESP comes to you. And there are many magicians who do that, as we know. But I was not doing magic for the CIA, because as we know, the CIA is not easily amused, and we were trying to do the real thing for them. The work we did at SRI involved things like finding a downed Russian airplane in North Africa with code books on it, locating a kidnapped American general in northern Italy, looking into a Soviet weapons factory in Soviet Siberia, describing the construction of a huge Soviet submarine in northern Russia, and we even looked at on a Chinese atomic bomb test 3 days before it was scheduled to go off and described correctly that it was going to fail. So we did quite a lot of useful things for the government during our 23-year program. The ability we're talking about is a natural psychic ability that we all have in spite of what you may have heard to the contrary. People can quiet their mind and describe and experience what's happening in a distant place or in the future. And this has been talked about for thousands of years. Buddhists have a vast lore about what this is and how to do it and why it's desirable. And I'll try and talk about that later. The ability allows you to quiet your mind and describe and experience what's happening in the future. And you can do that independent of the distance. The most interesting thing that we found as physicists is that it's no harder to describe what's happening in Soviet Siberia 6,000 miles away than it is for you to describe the funny object I have in my pocket. 6,000 miles away does not decrease the accuracy or the reliability as compared with something nearby. Looking into the distance is no harder than looking at a contemporaneous event. And that's why this is called a non-local perception. Not quantum mechanical particularly. It pertains to the fact that we live in a non-local space-time described as scientifically most recently by Schrödinger in the 1920s and then proved in the 1970s and 1980s. So the idea of non-local connections is not New Age. This is accepted in the physical community. The hottest topic in modern physics is exploring non-locality. It was described originally by the Buddhists 2,000 years ago, but modern physics has finally caught up. The leaders of the program that we had at SRI are all physicists. The physicists are taking over what used to be called parapsychology. The three leaders of the program were myself and Hal Puthoff, who are both laser physicists, and Ed May, who is a nuclear physicist. And we were eager that our scientific friends would not think that we'd gone off the rails into ESP research, so we made sure that we published everything we did, all of our experiments, in the world's most prestigious journals where we would normally publish our science. So we published our work in the Proceedings of the Institute of Electrical Engineers, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the American Institute of Physics, and Nature magazine. So this is not, I just want to emphasize that at the time we were doing this work, this was mainstream, written up in the New York Times, published in the premier journals in the world. And I want to give you an idea of where I was when this all began. In the 1960s, I was a hardcore laser guy. And here I'm standing in front of a 1,000-watt carbon dioxide laser at my most mavericky self. I'm trying to convince the government that I indeed had 1,000 watts coming out of this 1 meter package. And you see how we've got a little meter bar there. Government thought it's impossible because their lasers were 100 times bigger than mine. So I had 1,000 watts over something a meter long. They thought that is impossible. So it's like a reprise of what I was going to do 10 years later, trying to convince the government that some other impossible thing actually happened. So in this case, the idea is that I have a big fire brick. I'm going to drill a hole right through it and then hand the skeptical government scientists this big brick with a red-hot hole right drilled through it. And I'll ask them, do you want fries with that? And eventually they supported our program. They couldn't deny the fire brick with a hole. Today we would consider that kind of thing a paranormal object. There's no way to create a red-hot hole with a fire brick because it's not flammable. So that's what I had done. That was my career. I've been in laser. I was a laser pioneer. I was working with lasers many years before there were any lasers. So this was the outgrowth of my earliest studies in graduate school. So the question that led to my recent book, I wrote a book with a provocative subtitle, A Physicist's Proof of Psychic Abilities. And the idea is that proof is evidence so strong that you can't statistically or reasonably deny it. That's what we mean by proof. You can't prove scientific things in the laboratory the way you prove mathematical theorems. You prove things in the laboratory by piling up so much evidence that it's simply unreasonable to deny it. So here we are in our laboratory, 1973. There's Pat Price in the middle. Pat Price was one of our great, great psychics. He was police commissioner of Burbank and retired. He's playing here with an ESP teaching machine that was the basis of our first NASA program. My idea was, can you offer feedback and reinforcement and help people improve their psychic ability with a little random game where you have to guess which picture will be illuminated? The answer is yes, you can learn. And the great good news for you today is that game is now available as a free application for your iPhone. So I posted that as a little gift. It's called ESP Trainer, and you can just download it and have it on your iPhone. It'll ring a bell when you get the right answer and show you a pretty picture. So that's Pat Price. Price was an extraordinary psychic. He lived in a psychic bubble. He was an inspiration for me as to what ESP looks like in an evolved person. We were once called by the Berkeley Police Department, where Patricia Hearst was kidnapped, and they said, "We're so desperate, can you help us with your ESP program?" It shows how desperate they were. And Pat Price and Hal Putoff and I drove to Berkeley, and Price said, "Let's see your mug book." He's a no-nonsense guy, had been in lots of police stations. "I want to see the picture book with all the usual suspects." He turned the page, page after page, and said, "That's the guy, that's the ringleader." And he put his finger on Donald DeVries, who was indeed the ringleader. It's extraordinary. But they learned that only 2 weeks later. The police said, "Well, can you tell us something right now that'll help us?" And Price said, "Would you like to know where the kidnapped car is?" And they said, "You're kidding." He said, "Well, so if you drive about 50 miles north on Bayshore Free on Highway 101, the kidnapped car is a white station wagon. It's on the right, parked by a diner across from two large white gas storage cylinders in the pedestrian overpass across the freeway." And one of the detectives said, "Well, I know where that is. That's on my way to my home in Vallejo." 20 minutes later, they had found the car, and there are still cartridges rolling around on the floor of the car. That's as close to magic as I've ever seen in my 20 years in the laboratory. And the other folks there are Bob Monroe, who wrote about journeys out of the body, how to go from remote viewing to an out-of-body experience, but that's outside our schedule for today. And I'm on the right 40 years ago, and what that shows is that if you live long enough, you get to do a lot of interesting things. So this is the first in a series of experiments we did over a course of a decade, and it's basically what convinced the CIA to give us money. That is what we played is a kind of psychic hide and go seek. And all the pictures I'm going to show you are like this, so I won't reiterate. The way it works is Pat Price, or the psychic of the day, is in a shielded room, electrically shielded room with me. And Hal randomly is sent to an undisclosed location, random target picked by the lab director. He generally will go with the colonel from the Army or a lab director or a contract monitor. In this case, they went to a swimming pool complex called Rinconada Park. Price with me said, "I see a water purification plant. I see a square pool 65 by 80 and a round pool 100 feet in diameter and 2 water storage tanks. That's what I see." And that's what he drew on the right. Actually, they had gone to the swimming pool complex, and when we got there for feedback after the experiment, we saw the swimming pool is really 110 feet in diameter, and the rectangular pool is 75 by 100. So viewed from 5 miles away, he had the dimensions architecturally correct to 90%. Now, he had added in these 2 water tanks, which are on the right side of the picture, which are not at the location. And it's not a water purification plant, it's a swimming pool. However, and that's a story I would tell up to about 10 years ago, when the city of Palo Alto sent us a picture book showing what the city used to be like 75 and 100 years ago. 75 years, the psychic ones know all what the answer is going to be already. 75 years ago, this was a water purification plant, and the tallest thing in the city of Palo Alto were the 2 water tanks I show at the top, then Price drew at the left. So what he apparently did is move his awareness 5 miles south on Middlefield Road and describe the park where the guys were hiding, and then moved his awareness 75 years back to describe the biggest thing in the city. Off my schedule, I got to tell you, he also described a National Security Agency code facility in Virginia. And he described that and was able to read the file folders. And people wanted to know, why did you pick this to read? And he said, well, the more in psychic space, the more you hide something, the brighter it shines. So let that be warning to anybody who's having an affair. So the demonstration of ability test that we had from the CIA John McMahon, who's head of the CIA, said to us, "You guys are wasting your time looking at swimming pools and churches. We have targets that would be of national security help. Can you describe a target, and I'll send you the coordinates?" So Price and I climbed back into our little shielded phone booth, and he said, "Well, I'm psychically laying on a building, and a giant crane is rolling back and forth over my body. There's a huge crane. It has 8 wheels, 4 on either side of the building. And in this building, they're constructing a 60-foot steel sphere, and they're welding it together." That all turned out to be entirely true. In fact, it was so true that after the steel sphere was verified, we then had a congressional investigation called by the House Intelligence Oversight Committee to see if there had been a security leak. This in the spirit of no good deed goes unpunished. But the Congress eventually said what we're doing is okay. We were supported by CIA and Defense Intelligence Agency and told to press on, and we pressed on for another 15 years.
That's so incredible. I find it really extraordinarily interesting that there's distance isn't an issue, and neither is time. You know, that to me just blows me away. Like yesterday, today, tomorrow, it's all relevant to these people.
It's pretty mind warping, especially the fact that that it is time irrelevant. Like you could be seeing the same location at a whole different time. That's crazy.
Mm.
From what I get from it, it seems like they have trouble with the future, but they don't have trouble with the past. Right. And in a lot of those, they just seem like they struggle with the future. They can kind of guess up to like a few days, and that's about it. Just as a side note, and maybe I'm just a kid. Is it just me, or you guys remember Simpsons when the monorail came and the scientists showed up and saved the? Am I the only loser that watched that?
I don't think I've seen it. But
anyway, for anyone that's out there, that guy reminds me of the scientists that saved the town from the monorail. Anyway,
Russell Targ, yeah, that's awesome. You know, I will say that I've heard a couple of different claims through the years, and one of them I thought was really interesting. I can't speak to the veracity of the claim, but what apparently was going on in one of these government programs doing this. Somebody was given a set of coordinates, and I don't know, it's just another set of numbers to this person. But he went on to describe being in a cave and seeing all kinds of weird mechanisms around, and like these people were being placed on these beds and put in what he described as like a suspended animation. And he said the figure there didn't look like a normal person. It looked quite a bit different, even quite a bit taller apparently, but turned and was able to perceive this person, this human being, remote viewing, and they were able to have a dialogue. And the guy's like, you know, what's going on? And apparently the being or creature said, "There's nothing you can do. Our time is over." And he said he felt a great swell of sadness. And I'm really paraphrasing this. But after he related this, he asked, "Where was this?" And apparently the handler said those coordinates are on Mars about 1 million years ago.
That was Joseph. I have him on that clip. He's the I don't want to run it for everyone. The Russian submarine.
Yeah.
So that was one of the very first one. What they had is, for the audience, they had a thing in envelopes, and it was the same thing for everyone, but none of these guys knew what was in the envelope. And I actually went through that document that you're talking about, and they were giants. They were giants in suspended animation. And when you listen to it, you're like, I don't know about all that, especially on Mars. But almost everyone said the same thing. There was giants up there in suspended animation, and they ended up coming here. And I mean, what do you make of that? It sounds like a madman and when you play Joseph, you'll understand. I mean, this is a guy that spent his whole life in the military, served his country. When you hear him talk, he's not crazy. I don't know what to. You should have for the audience, call in. I'd love to hear other people's opinion. Maybe this is all crazy. I'll show you guys this though. I was interviewing Timothy Ringer before, and I wanted to set all this up. But so they will give these guys coordinates to a location, and they've never been there. They don't know what it is. And I believe this is Joseph's drawing. It might be the guy that died, Prince, but that's what he drew. He drew this little cabin. There's mountains in the background, and he didn't. I guess they sit like in a room that they really can't leave or have no interaction except for with the handler. And after he got done drawing it, this is what the location was.
Oh wow!
I mean, look at that.
That's incredible.
That is amazing.
I mean, how do you? I guess Ingo, when he talks towards the end, it's kind of a longer clip. I kind of get what he's saying. He was talking about our eyes, for example. How many shades of color can the human eye see? Mm-hmm. And it's 240,000. And when you hear a speech at the end, you kind of walk away and go, yeah, I guess he's right. I guess we are. He uses a different term, but it's almost like we're so dumbed down that we just don't use any of this stuff anymore. And when you think about the brain and you think about everything that we can do, it makes you, do you think it would be wrong morally to go into this, to do this sort of thing, do this, go to a location or go look at, I don't know if there's a moral question there. Maybe we're not supposed to do that. I'm kind of conflicted on it. But like I said, you look at some of these drawings that these guys are doing, like Joseph talking about the Russian sub that he saw them building. He describes everything. And the CIA came back and said, there's no way. It's 1,000 yards from the ocean. And he goes, they'll launch in 100 days. And he was within 7 days of them. What they call it, a typhoon.
Typhoon class.
Yeah, it was it was the biggest submarine ever created. And he was watching them. He claims he was watching. I don't know what's going on there. Do you think it's our sensories, or do you think that it's something helping us? I guess I'm lost in how these guys are doing it.
So,
but I'm a monkey, so.
Well, I think the thing is that, if you think about what our true essence is, like we're energy. Our consciousness is energy, and of course, physics tells us that every matter at its most basic part is energy. It's not really matter until it becomes a little more complex through energetic layering or whatever. But I think we're intrinsically linked to the energy of the universe. Like, and I think it's built into us. So I think what it is, it's like opening eyes that we haven't really ever opened before, like it's in all people, these awarenesses. It's just, we've never really been shown how, for the most part, other than these few examples. But imagine, I think that it's kind of cool. I understand what you're saying with the conflicted part, because everybody deserves privacy. But on the other hand of it, just think if everybody could see so clearly, how much of the crap in the world would just have to wash away because it would never stand up. What do you think, Sheldon?
I think, and while I was watching this, I kept thinking this over and over, but I do believe it. I think this is somehow linked to intuition or that gut feeling you get. I mean, think about it. When you have a bad feeling about something that's going to happen, mm-hmm. and you decide not to do it, you find out that the very reason why you had that bad feeling, like, oh, I guess that's why I had it. I really do feel like these things are linked.
Mm-hmm. I think.
Well, it's like you and I were talking about the other day, Brent. How is it that you can be, in a huge arena or whatever, and one person's looking at the back of your head, and everyone's done it. We all turn around and you look and you make eye contact with the person that's. Okay. I mean, how do we don't have eyes in the back of our head? Is that, I can't even. I don't have a great explanation for that either.
No, I think you're right, and I mean, especially in your arena, you're in the obviously the Sasquatch arena, and you hear stories all the time. How many times have you heard we felt that something just suddenly was watching us, and it'll be like an abrupt change, like people will be doing their thing and just having a good time, and then boom, they said there was a shift in the air, and I felt the eyes on me, and then all of a sudden things really end up going sideways because there's something there watching them. And so much that comes up in the stories, and it comes up in the paranormal as well. You know, I mean, it's just, we seem to have that sense. And I think that it's probably, part of maybe our latent psychic survival mechanism. Like, cause we're not extraordinarily fast. We're not extraordinarily strong. We're not extraordinary adept to our environment, but maybe the one thing that really helped us not be on the food chain all the time was that we could kind of tell when things were going to be a problem, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's actually a really good point.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I think there's something to it, though.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a clip that's coming up, but the ice crystal rings, is that coming up at all?
Ice crystal rings. I don't remember that.
Yeah, so go ahead, Sheldon, because this is crazy.
Yes.
This is completely, I mean, after this, if you don't think this is real, I don't know what to tell you. You're talking about the rings of Saturn?
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll let you take it away.
So it's on one of the notes, some of the interesting things I wrote down. But in Indigo Swan, in April 28th, 1973, he was the first person to describe the ice crystals around Jupiter, months before our satellites got there. And that's how we confirmed that he was right, was because we discovered ice rings around, or Saturn, rather. Yeah.
Oh, it was around Saturn? Or I thought it was Jupiter. I thought you were right.
Maybe it is Jupiter.
No, I think Sheldon's right. It's Saturn. He describes there were certain rings that I was trying to see if I had that picture. Nothing like showing up and being so unprepared.
That's fine.
I have his drawing somewhere.
Okay. Well, if you want to dig that up, I'll
have a picture of Tony Merkel, but yeah, I got a picture. How'd this get on my computer? No, I'll look for it. But yeah, it was before. What was it? Was it the Voyager, Sheldon, that was going across her?
Oh,
I'm questioning it now, but I think so.
Okay.
And it was before the ship actually got there, and it didn't get there till later. But he describes what it's like on Saturn, and he's describing all this stuff, and he discovered a bunch of extra rings that it has.
Oh.
And NASA didn't even know that till they got the ship over there and they finally got pictures of it. But he drew those rings around. Gosh, I have it somewhere. I think it's that last clip that I have. Towards the end, he talks about that, and it's a true story that he found these rings on Saturn that no one knew about. I mean, I don't know how you fake that. You know what I mean?
I believe it was even like, I think they said it was 6 months before, assuming it is Voyager, actually got to those rings. So way in advance.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, that's profound as hell, because I mean, how would anybody know that? I mean, I think the rings, the main rings are observable. If it's Saturn, they've been observed from telescopes for hundreds of years. But if there's extra rings, I mean, yeah, that's really wild. Let me play this clip, and this is from the movie that we watched, the Psychic Spies, and let's check it out. I think this might have the story you're talking about, Wes, about them seeing the cabin and stuff. But let's check it out.
I was given the results. The drawings showed the ability of a visual representation that appeared to be better than overhead imagery. In Pat Price's drawings, it was as if it was from inside his brain that the information was coming, not from his eyeballs overhead looking down.
It was obvious to any intelligence organization that if you had an ability to be able to remotely perceive stuff, really remotely, like any place in the world, that could be an extraordinary intelligence source.
The remote viewing program basically ran from the early 70s to the mid 90s.
For more than 20 years, the CIA used psychic abilities operationally and in a top secret program for the U.S. government. You paid for them, you deserve to see them.
CIA had said cease and desist. And people said, this stuff is so intriguing that we got back into the game.
We once found a guy that could see anywhere in the world through his psychic powers. We could show him a picture of any place and he could describe any activity going on there. But he died, and we haven't heard from him since. CIA Director Stansfield Turner, Chicago Tribune, August 1977.
So I believe when he died, he was out in Las Vegas or something, and Kit Green rushed out there.
Even though he died unattended in a hotel room, you don't need to make it a medical examiner case, although that's not correct. And he was taken to the emergency room, which I visited. Speaking now as a criminologist, I would have investigated the hell out of it.
Yeah, I think that one wasn't the same clip that I thought, but still, it's really interesting. And you could see some of those sketches versus the photos that show what these guys remote viewed versus the actual photo of the locations, and it's so scary accurate that's the part I think that's unnerving.
Oh yeah,
that Pat Price was he was pretty amazing. When you really, the movie touches a little bit on his life. He was one of the best ones out there, but it's pretty much everyone agrees across the board the Russians whacked him. I can't remember how they killed him. They killed him to where it wouldn't be traced back. But they absolutely killed that guy. Everyone thinks it's CIA. I don't think the CIA killed that guy. CIA wouldn't kill you don't kill the golden goose, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I think that's so wild. You know what else I was actually shocked from that movie, and I'm kind of rough on the guy when I'm talking about him nowadays. And it was Uri Geller. He was actually in there, and according to the footage and what the scientists are claiming, he was actually quite adept at this as well. And I was surprised at that because now he's claiming credit for moving ships that are blocking canals and stuff. So I don't know what's wrong with that guy. He's just really trying to stay relevant. But I think also Uri Geller might have taken this and tried to go all Hollywood with it and ended up getting himself stuck, because I know that he was confronted by the amazing Randy on, I think, the Tonight Show, and he really shut him down and made him look stupid. But it is interesting. But then again, the other takeaway is that allegedly anybody can learn to do this. It's not like a gift that you're born with, other than I think we're all born with it. We just got to figure out or learn how to dial it in,
Yeah. Also, we might have a call coming in. Android coming in with the $2. Thank you so much, Android. And he says he's calling in.
He's calling in. Well, I better connect to the phones. I didn't, because we're on this panel. I didn't want the phone panel taking up Sheldon's head. But I'll connect it now. So just hold on, Android. We'll connect to you right.
Somebody get a picture. There it goes, right there. Anyone get a picture of that guy?
Oh, the big.
Yeah.
Oops, I hit the wrong thing. Hold on. There we go. Let's connect the phones, and we'll talk to him here. Okay. Almost connected. There we go. All right. I am now connected, and let's talk to our good friend, Mr. Android. Is this you, Android? Are you there? Hello?
Android.
Is it working?
Hi, guys.
Hello, are you there? I can hear we're connecting to somebody.
Yeah.
Who's talking? Who's in area code 904? Hello? I don't know. They're like coming in and out. I don't know if it's a leg issue or what.
Hello.
Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Who are we talking to?
Okay, I'm going to shut your feed off
Yeah, please do.
and see if you can still hear me.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
I have a ghostly experience that I was asked about.
Oh,
And
okay.
if you want, I would be glad to share it. Everything I say is going to be the truth.
Okay. We're talking about remote viewing tonight, but go ahead. Is it a quick story?
No. I think.
Yeah.
How do I got two people?
I sat there one night and I got choked out by some hands. And the hands were kind of made out of some smoke. Then they turned into a little ball and went through the wall. That's all.
Wow. That's incredible, but scary, huh?
Well, that was the end of it. I kind of ignored the beginning because I didn't want to believe it at first.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't think I'd like to be choked in seeing ghostly hands either. That's absolutely horrible. Do you have other activity that happened before this, or was this just kind of?
Well, yeah, it was kind of gradual things. Like on the carpet, I hear boots walking on a wood floor. You know, that's not freaking possible. Oh, freaking possible.
Yeah.
And then I go walk into the bathroom and I see the door handle turn and the door's shut. And it takes some force because the cat was always trying to get out from under that door whenever he was shut in that room.
Wow.
He wouldn't stay in that room.
Okay. That's incredible.
And so the carpet was all piled up, and I watched the door handle turn, and I know it takes some force to shut that door. And, you know, but that was kind of toward the end. Before that, there was a lot of other signs, like 100 flies on the window pane in the middle of winter all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Cabinet doors opening, you know, the usual shit, I reckon.
Yeah. The other stuff, yeah. So I got to ask you, do you we got baseball on the screen here. Do you listen to Sasquatch
We have a
Chronicles?
6-second delay.
Yeah, we got a little bit of a delay. Do you ever listen to Sasquatch Chronicles?
No, but I like Steve Isdall when he reads stories from Sasquatch encounters. I've never had one.
Okay.
But
well, let's
you
hope
know,
you don't.
I just enjoy it.
Okay.
I didn't pay attention to this stuff till it happened to me.
Yeah, that's the case for a lot of people, of course. But thank you for calling in and sharing that. That's pretty amazing, and I'm glad you're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm out of that house.
Yeah.
Ooh, I will not go within 10 miles of it today.
Well, take care of yourself, brother, and call in any time when you got something more to share.
That's about it.
All right. Well, have a great night, and thanks for being a part of the show.
Good night.
Love you guys.
Love you too. Take care.
Bye.
See ya. All right. And we got
Sorry, I didn't mean for that to pop up.
I started watching the game. I got another call here, and this is let's get to it. Where the hell did my mouse go? There it is.
This might be Android. Yeah.
This is area code 701. You're on the air.
Squeak, squeak. You got the mouse?
Hey, Nace.
Hey.
How you doing, brother?
Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Sheldon and guest.
That's
remote viewing.
Yeah.
What a wonderful topic, and I've been enjoying the show. And it's really interesting about how our intuition has been purposely dulling through the overabundance of stimulation. From my perspective, as a Anishinaabe descendant, my people discuss about how we have the ability to talk to our ancestors. And through my own quest of, you know, the paranormal, the metaphysicals, when I got into the topic of remote viewing, when it makes me reflect on the teaching of my ancestors, how our genetic composition is of our parents, 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 parents. And that has happened through the past.
Okay.
And so if we look at our genetic composition, our energy, our essence that has been passed on from the past, then we have a connection to the past. Whereas in our brain, we have neurotransmitters and receivers, which work like radio transmitters and receivers.
Oh, okay.
And so if we have the ability to fine tune, to tune in to our genetic composition, then we could logically tap into our past. And if there is the truth of genetic information or genetic memory, then the feasibility of tapping into our past of the earth is, to me, seemingly attainable, especially if we look at the conditions of the biosphere of the earth is set up for the parameters of our existence.
Sure.
And then as the host brought up about Mars, and I believe there's truth to that, because I came across that also in a lot of remote viewing, that they were trying to find out specifically Cydonia in the face on Mars. They were trying to investigate and basically remote view a tour of the site, and that they were coming up with these feasibilities, possibilities of what happened. And if genetic memory is true, then I would agree or follow the belief that some of us have been genetically manipulated through the past because of Mars. When its planet died, some of those that escaped their planet came here.
Oh, okay.
To the Earth.
Now
and so that genetic
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, do you remote view yourself, Nacy? I mean, have you ever worked on? Have you ever tried that, or?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, and how did that experience go for you? Just curious.
Well, it made me think as I was listening to the show of the three of you doing, since you're all three at three different locations, it'd be interesting if you all took a moment and wrote down three different numbers and see how close, if you guys could fine tune into each other. And I would dare say that Sheldon and you would have a higher accuracy because of the connection genetically.
Let's do it.
Okay.
So what is it, Nacy? Three numbers? Is it double digits? Does it have
three numbers?
Just any numbers?
Three numbers, any random numbers, and I would suggest they be different numbers and not all the same.
Oh, okay. Are you?
So don't use like 1, 2, 3. I'm just joking.
That's
my pick.
Does zero count? Just any. So are you envisioning these numbers, Nacy, or is that what we're doing here? Are you coming up with the numbers?
Well, I guess I could be involved with it, but I was just more curious on the three of you writing, a 3-digit number.
A 3-digit number.
Any numbers.
Okay.
A 3-digit number, any number between 0 and 9.
Okay.
In any order, whether you want it to be 0, 1, 2, or 5, 6, 7, or 9, 1, 5.
Okay.
And now I think I manipulated a little bit by throwing out those numbers.
No.
That's what I was
But if
writing.
you've all written up your
yeah.
So then if you guys have done those numbers, if you guys held them up, I don't know if you're on the YouTube on the screen with everybody.
It's not working.
Your pen's not working?
It's the second pen.
Okay, so just 3 numbers. Which numbers are Wes writing?
Just like in high school. Done.
All right. I think Wes's has a 7. Oh, I shouldn't say it out loud, right? Okay.
Okay, I got
I was
mine.
going to say 7, 3, and 9.
Naysay, you're copying off my paper. That's actually very close to what I wrote down, Naysay, just for the record. I wrote down 735. There's my paper right there. So anybody can see it. So that was interesting.
Right.
Did anybody else get my numbers?
I got 327.
Oh, that's actually a different order, but
There's,
and you only missed
there's a
one.
3 and a 7.
Yep.
Backwards, but yeah, 327.
What'd you hit, Wes? I can't see it.
Wrong button. 591.
591. Okay.
9.
So yeah, Wes and I both
So,
got 5.
yeah.
And Sheldon and I both got 7 and 3. Okay. That's that.
Interesting.
I guess
You know,
that's
and I do believe that we all have this full potential.
mm-hmm.
And one thing that I've shared with you before, Brent, is when I do my rituals and my ceremonies, especially when I do my fasting,
Mm-hmm.
when I get into that, 5th day, 6th day,
Yeah.
to me, it sometimes freaks me out because I feel like I'm so tapped in that it's just coincidence, synchronicities. I struggle with that.
That's
many
interesting
times
that
when
you
I
say
do the
that.
fasting.
That's interesting that you say that because I mean if I know that in the Bible for the Christians I know Jesus talks about casting out the spirits. He says you can't do this unless you've fasted and meditated and prayed over a period of quite a while. And so there must be something to that with the fasting as far as cleansing our mind, body, and spirit altogether. That's an interesting takeaway. Huh.
I don't think you need
and I'll share.
What's that?
Sorry. Go ahead, Nacy. I apologize.
No, go ahead. You're the guest. I'm sorry.
No. I wasn't going to say anything very intelligent. I was going to say, I don't think that's exactly how it says in the Bible, but I almost think fasting is like a way to separate yourself physically. And maybe, I don't know really I don't skip too many meals, as you can see. So, can I ask you, Nacy, I guess I'll be the scumbag in the group that'll ask you the question. Did you ever use it for financial gain? Because in the movie, those guys actually play the stock market, and they actually walked away with a ton of money.
Well, one thing that I've experienced is that when I focus my intent on what I need over what I want, more times than not, my needs are fulfilled. And it may sometimes occur, but the percentage of what I want happening isn't high. And it, what's the expression? Be careful of what you wish.
Sure.
The same thing goes with, be careful of what you want, because you may get a hint or a sliver of what you overall wanted, but the repercussions of what may come with that is really interesting. And I'll leave you with one of my scariest or weirdest, if you want to call it, remote viewing.
Okay.
Here in my little town, there was, and this isn't the greatest of stories, there was a woman who was pregnant that went missing, and my attendant that came during the day, was talking about it. And as she was telling me about it, all of a sudden I said to her, they're going to find her on the shore of the river, that they went south of my town to the Red River, and they were going to put the woman's body in the Red River. But when they got south of the river, they forgot that the Red River flows north instead of south, like most rivers in the United States. So they went west further to the next river, and then that's where they put the body. A week later, my attendant came in, and to to digress a little bit, she said, well, why don't you call the police about it? You know, and I was almost tempted to. She almost talked me into it, but I felt too bizarre and too weird about sharing this with her.
Mm-hmm.
The next week came by, and she said, did you hear about the finding of the woman's body? And I'm like, no. And they said they found her at the Cheyenne River about 8 miles to the west of me and a little bit south.
Wow.
And so that was one experience that where, because it's scary, and I've shared with your audience before, you know, sometimes when I share these experiences that I have,
mm-hmm.
as I share them, I feel crazy.
Sure.
You know, because it's not a normal thing.
Yeah.
And it's taken a lot, you know, from myself on the full spectrum of sharing these experiences, you know, because in my experience, you know, Brent, you know this as well as I do, you know, doing the internet and the radio and stuff, that there's the full spectrum where there's some people that are telling you the truth and there's some people that are lying.
Mm-hmm.
And that fear you have by coming forward with these stories is validated sometimes when you get almost persecuted by some people where they don't believe you, you know, and they will be hell-bent about, you know, you're full of it or you're making it up.
Sure.
And then also from those that I know that are Christian, where they'll make comments about like, oh, that's in league with demons and the devils.
Yeah.
You know, because in the Bible it says, you know, about messing with magic. And I think this is magic with a K. And we all have this possibility and this potential. So I strongly suggest, you know, go for it, you know, but please work in positivity or neutrality and stay away from the negativity. But great show, Brent.
Oh.
I hope I was able to add to it and really enjoy the guests. And always a pleasure to hear you, Sheldon. Thank you.
You as well, Nace.
Thank you, Nace. And it's great to hear from you as well. And thanks for calling in, brother.
Toodles.
All right. See ya. And we got another.
I bet he'd be a fun guy to hang out with.
Yeah, he's a really fascinating person. He's been a friend of mine for years and been calling, and he's been a guest on the show several times as well. But he's got such a diverse knowledge base on so many things. Very intelligent guy as well. And
He's got a.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
He's got a really good point as far as like, if this is something that we truly all have the ability to do, I feel like with all the distractions and things that keep getting introduced to keep us focused on other things and entertained and distracted, I think it's putting more barriers up for us to access these things and focus our minds.
Yeah, when you look at the world and all the multimedia, high definition, surround sound, and there's so many things pounding on us, and then, you know, it's just, how do you get centered? How do you like relax and learn to see through things, you know, through your own problems? But we got another call here too, and this I think is Android.
It's Android.
Android, are you there? Testing 1 2. Android, are you there?
Hey, how you guys?
Oh.
Yeah, how you guys doing?
Oh, good.
Hey, Android. There you are.
Doing good, man. What's on your mind tonight, brother?
Oh, not much. When Wes said he was questioning some of the mechanics behind all, you know, how all this might be happening, you know, I've been thinking about this before and thought I'd put in my 2 cents here. And, you know, I'm certainly no expert on any of this stuff, but just being a little bit of a tech geek, I guess, you know, and reading some articles about, you know, just tech in general over my years, and kind of trying to apply it to this. You know, if you think about it, you know, we have all these radio waves and cell phone signals, you know, traveling through the air, you know, every day. They're traveling through all of our bodies right now, you know, every second of the day now.
Sure.
And, you know, this is, you know, these are signals that we can't see. And so if you apply that same kind of thing, technology or, you know, concept to the human body, right? You know, our body has these electrical impulses inside them, through not just through the brain, but through our nerves and our whole body. And so we're giving off electrical impulses just like a radio tower would. And so we must be sending off some sort of electrical signal or some sort of frequency or something like that through the air, and, who knows how far it travels. But then also our bodies are almost able to act like a receiver. And maybe some people's bodies are, able to pick up this signal more than other people, I think that everybody's probably got the biological ability, but maybe it comes down to genetics. Some people are just, easier to, build muscle than other people. It's a genetic thing. Whereas this might be a genetic thing where some people might have this receiver in their head a little better than other people, and they're able to tune in on that. Now, I think everybody could probably perfect it and make it better if they the right practice potentially. But that's the kind of the way I view it, as it's like a radio signal transmission that other humans are giving off from their electrical signals in their brain that certain people are able to pick up on easier.
Sure. And maybe that works for places as well. Like everything that exists has its own electromagnetic signature in this chorus. So, you can tune into a place
right
the same way you could tune into a person, right?
Right. And or maybe it's not even that. That could be a possibility too, but pretty much every place on Earth, especially if it's a place that's built by human, like a building or something like they were trying to find for the Russians or the Soviets, there's obviously people who've been to that building and who have an image of that building in their brain, know what it looks like, know what's in there and stuff like that. So they could maybe also just be tapping into the people's brains of people who work there, their radio signal.
Yeah, maybe that's a great point. Wow. That's very profound.
Yeah, and to your point, Android, I agree with you. I mean, as far as demonic, you don't really hear any. It's not like any of these people are talking to any entities. In fact, most of the time they say to clear your mind, and it's meditation. And I mean, if you're a Christian, isn't that what Jesus did? Isn't that what most of the prophets did to kind of clear their mind to speak with God? And I don't know how all that semantics works, but everything that I've seen so far, there's no evil. The only evil entity seems to be the CIA.
No chickens were harmed in the remote viewing. That's right. They're shaking the bones. Nothing like that.
Oh no! Don't freak out. No.
Can't wait to get my tax audit tomorrow.
Oh man, no, I think that's very profound, Android. I appreciate your input on this, and that's the beauty of this, these abilities to have the chance to share these thoughts and to come to, because you said things I would never have considered, but you could very well be right.
Hey, Android, did you watch the show on Amazon? Did you catch this movie or documentary?
No, I did not. No, not at all. No.
If you get a chance, watch it. It's pretty good. Great.
Okay, I'll definitely check it out. I'm also going to reach out to you, Wes, because I was listening to one of your shows recently, actually, that kind of sounded awfully familiar to an experience I've had. Brent and Sheldon have already heard it, but I'm just going to send forward it to you anyways, because it sounds a lot like one of your experiences you had on your show too. So I'm going to forward it to you just for your own interest.
Cool, man. Yeah, shoot me your contact info when you do. I'll hit you up, man. Appreciate it.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for talk, guys.
Yeah, thanks for calling in, man. It's great to hear from you.
All right, bye.
Very cool. I like when people call in. That's kind of nice. Wes, you got to come on the show more often, because that doesn't happen a whole lot.
I know. I feel so bad. I'm so exhausted tonight. I had like this big show planned, and then literally right before you called, Brent, I was talking with Renner. I was interviewing him, and I wanted to get all the pictures, and yeah, well, it is what it is.
It's a great show. This has been a great show so far.
I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. And I think it's more fascinating than I should, because I really thought it was BS until I spent 2 hours and watched this, and I don't think it's BS.
No, I don't.
I can't do it, but
no, I bet you could, though. That's the cool part, is it seems like it's accessible to anybody that's willing to devote the time and energy to dial it in, That's what I think is cool. All right.
I'd be at the crap stable.
I'd be remote viewing the lottery.
Yeah,
what is the Powerball? I need the Powerball. All right, we're going to check out Oh, go
Wonder
ahead.
Woman's wondering the title of the movie.
Oh yeah, what was it called again? I got it open.
It's like The Third Eye or something.
Third Eye Spies.
Third Eye Spies. And the link to the movie that we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, is in the description, the show description right on YouTube there. I did put a link to the actual show that you can check out. It is absolutely fascinating. And I'm going to show another clip from that movie right now. So let's check this out. And I think this is the cabin one, Wes, because the last one wasn't. And one of these times I'm going to be right. So the law of averages is with me. Wes, this is the one.
Let me remote view it. Yep, that's it.
All right, we got it, ladies and gentlemen. Check it out. Wes has confirmed. Here we go.
There was a hiatus, and then Sugar Grove came along. And somebody says this cockamamie thing, well, now what we're doing is we're doing remote viewing by coordinates. And I say, what?
It was codenamed Scanate.
The Scanate program was started by Ingo Swann, and in that program, where we were using coordinate remote viewing, a viewer described what was located at any geographical coordinate of latitude and longitude and would then describe what's there.
And they tell me what this is. And I say something like, well, you're going to have to prove that to me. And the door opened at the end of the hallway and a guy walks out. Could you give me some coordinates, just map coordinates of a place that you know? He says, this will do it. He says, I'm positive you don't know anything about what's there. I said, perfect. I took him.
And then Kit gave Harold's coordinates that nobody knew about.
From Ingo's standpoint, he said this is really a sexy target. It's got all kind of antennas. Seems like a very hush-hush place, very military, and he drew how things were laid out.
The results came back so specific on paper that I was just like, I was kind of nonplussed. It included a diagram, guardhouse, accordion doors that roll up big enough to put a Jeep through, 4 stories below, hallway, cipher lock, and I took it to my colleague Dave, who had given me the coordinates, and I said, here. He said, man, Green, this is nonsense. I said, are you really sure? And he said, man, I gave you the coordinates of the log cabin I just built in West Virginia. So I called up my colleagues and I gave them the results, and I'm sick of it. And just before I hung up, the fellow I was talking to, who I can't name, but whose initials were Russ Targ, said, that's really too bad. It's really too bad. Really too bad. The other guy found the same thing.
Early in the SRI program, there had been some publicity, and Pat Price had read about it. That happened to be right when we had been asked to target on the West Virginia site. So it was over the telephone, saying, I used to be maybe police commissioner or something like that in Burbank, and sometimes I would get intuitive flashes about some crime scene that we were working on, and it would turn out I was be right. Maybe I should be a subject.
SRI comes up with Pat Price. He had a map on the over his desk, and he had a bunch of pins on the map of the world, and their pins were all stuck in the ocean. And I asked him, I said, Pat, what are all those pins? They're just scattered all around. He said, I'm following all the nuclear submarines in the world, and I move the pins around and I relocate them. For an intelligence officer, this would be one of the most fundamental breakthroughs in naval intelligence if you could follow all the submarines in the world.
Pat Price was brought in independently to describe the same target location and went on to read documents hidden in the vault 3 floors below the surface.
I said, that's really interesting. Okay, yeah, okay, I'll talk. What did you say? And I drove to the coordinates, and I found the cabin. 100 meters down the road, I found a dirt road from the cabin. I drove down it, found a guardhouse, found a dish, found the accordion door.
This naval installation's purpose is to perform communications research and development for the U.S. Navy, the Department of Defense, and various elements of the U.S. government.
I reported that.
It got to the Office of Research and Development, it got to the Office of OTS, and there was, a huge controversy.
And it started as very small ball.
But what the person who picked the target didn't realize was just right over the ridge, a mile or so away, whatever it was this super secret facility for picking up Russian satellite information as it went overhead. And so both of them said, maybe that's what they want us to describe.
In the 1960s, Sugar Grove became one of the NSA's most important Cold War listening facilities. And then the whole thing blew up.
But remember, it was about what was inside that building. File folders with the following names. I remember that they were all associated with a pool game, like playing pool or billiards.
Filing cabinet on the north wall labeled Operation Pool Cue. 4-ball, 8-ball, rack up.
I'm saying, this is reminiscent of his visit to the place that Kit took him.
Within 48 hours, I had security officers in my office at headquarters. And they were grim-faced and they were upset. And I was told this officially, it's been made public. The filing cabinets were there, they were green, there were file folders, and they had the exact 3 names on the file folders. Now, that was the first thing that was important, is that they were correct. However, those guys out in California got the code names. They got code names that were part of a special access program, not just code names. They got special access program code names which were classified top secret. The names were classified top secret.
We were then descended upon by all the law enforcement of the United States.
We had government agencies from NSA and CIA coming to visit us and find out why the CIA had targeted a group of psychics to go spying on the NSA.
So I didn't know whether to be sick to my stomach or what to do.
Wow. How's that for crazy?
No kidding.
That was the cabin one, ladies and gentlemen. That's the one we've been talking about.
Yeah, he was able to also describe the names of everyone in the building or the base, one of the two, but he was able to describe all of the names. People who work there. This is so crazy.
I know, and then the files, with the secret file names on them. It's like, oh no. And all of a sudden the NSA and stuff is knocking on the door going, what the hell's going on here?
Spying on us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that military base was like beyond top secret.
Mm-hmm.
And they were pissed when they showed up. And he's describing that, I would think that the place was, someone had sold you down the river. I mean, what else are you supposed to, because no one knows about it, but it was so close to that guy's cabin. It was literally like 2 miles over the ridge from his place.
Yeah, that's freaky.
Yeah.
And he just built a cabin there too, that one guy. It's like
he did.
Right next to a top secret military. It's like, oh no, guess where the missiles are coming. Enjoy the view. Oh man, that's crazy. I think this stuff is so profound and so powerful. That's the part that's amazing. And to think that it's all there in all of us. That's encouraging. Special hello to Mr. Longbeard, who hopped into the chat. Good to see you, brother.
Hello, Don.
Yeah, we miss him. He'll be back. But yeah, that's crazy. So, let's see. We've got that one clip. How long is that one clip, Wes?
With Ingo?
Well, Ingo and then McGonagall. So, Joseph.
Joseph's is pretty short.
Okay.
He's the guy that he remote viewed and he found the submarine.
Yeah. Okay.
Russian submarine. I think it's like 5 minutes or something like that. The other one's like 25 minutes, but I like that guy. I mean, I like weird people. So they're kind of my people.
So which one should we play first?
Do the Russian sub.
Okay.
Unless you, yeah.
No, that's fine. Well, let's go for it. Let's hear this one.
A former Army officer, Joe McMonagle was part of a top-secret research program run by the Defense Intelligence Agency and CIA for over 20 years. Only recently declassified, the Stargate project examined a variety of phenomena, especially one known as remote viewing.
Remote viewing means the ability to remotely perceive information about a person, place, event, object that you have absolutely no access to through any other means except via the mind.
Beginning in the 1950s, the United States government explored the use of extrasensory perception for intelligence operations, with officials worried that the Soviets were ahead in the psychic arms race. Joe had already developed a reputation for his intuitive powers.
When you use the ability for so many years, you inherently begin to trust it more than you do other people because you're applying it on a day-to-day basis. In the case of being in Vietnam on a hazardous duty area, where my own intuitive feelings would tell me, no, this isn't the right thing to do, or I'd start getting that heavy feeling in my stomach and the butterflies and the hair standing up in the back of my neck. It doesn't take long for other people to start noticing that you're inherently making the right decision.
In 1972, Joe was recruited as remote viewer number 001. He would ultimately participate in hundreds of missions.
In Joe's case, I was the judge, and the results were astounding, not only for him, but overall for the entire group, which caught our attention. We were doing mostly operational work, where they might say, well, we expect something to happen a month from now, what can you tell us about it?
The first precognitive remote viewing that I did after I got angry, there was an admiral in the National Security Council who brought my remote viewing back to me and said that they basically did not believe that there was a submarine being built in a building in Severodvinsk, Russia. It made me very angry. They said they didn't believe it because the building was 1,000 meters from the sea. I said, go back and tell them they're going to launch it in 114 days. And the Typhoon-class submarine was launched from the building within 7 days of my prediction.
Today, they are running a test to see whether Joe can describe a photograph that he will be shown in the future.
This is a precognition trial, and what I mean by that is the computer, and nor I, nor anybody here will know the target until you finish your response to that target. It'll be randomly chosen when we're all done.
The task in these particular remote viewings, precognitively describe the photograph. That's the task. If I don't describe the picture, I'm wrong.
Please access and describe a photograph that you will see on this computer a few minutes from now.
One of the difficulties in remote viewing is probably its title, because one of the things it implies is that you're actually seeing something. In some cases, you're not. The thing that I do, and at least the way I approach it, is I try to empty my mind to open a stage where the next thing that I allow in is what I expect to be pertinent to the target. I'm left with kind of an image of a building with an entry gate with walls. I hesitate to say fortress, but it's some kind of walls.
I think that what Joe is doing is like what anybody else does, that our mind is not locked inside our brain. Our mind exists, in some sense, exists everywhere. We mostly think of it as being in there, which is why we're limited to mostly sensory information, but that's an illusion in a sense. We're actually more spread out in space and time than we know. So what Joe does and what other people like him do is change the focus of their attention. In a sense, that's all he does. He changes the focus of attention from mostly in here to tomorrow, or to 10 minutes over there.
Is that about it?
That's it.
All right. While I do the judging, if you wouldn't mind excusing yourself.
Sure.
We'll see you later. We'll call you back when it's all done. The computer chooses 5 pictures at random, very carefully done so without any knowledge of what Joe's drawing was. And at this stage of the little experiment, it's precognition, so the actual answer has yet to be chosen. What I do now is to try to match these 5 photographs that I'm looking at to the one that best matches this response. And one of them appears to be a very solid match. My first place match is a Middle Eastern, clearly Middle Eastern village, and it has a walled enclosure exactly like he drew. Now that the judging is complete, where I've picked what I think is the right answer, we ask the computer to randomly pick one of these 5 pictures as the target. I'll switch around here, and it's a building.
Yeah.
You said mosque-like in one of the things.
Yeah.
It certainly has that. It's got the spires. It is brown. You can't come to any conclusion on the basis of a single draw. It could have been lucky. On the other hand, the lifetime average of Joe is somewhere a little under 50%, where 20% is chance. And the statistical likelihood of that is it should never happen by chance alone.
Absolutely, I can see the future. I've been doing it for 30 years. I've been doing it in labs under controls. I've been doing it out of labs for customers. It's as easy to do as it is to see the present. So, fait accompli.
Today, Joe runs his own private remote viewing firm.
I've had customers for 10 years, and I've asked them, why do you keep coming back to me? And they've said, because you're one of the best remote viewers I've ever worked with. You know, you've made X millions of dollars for my company. Why wouldn't I keep coming back to you?
Yeah, that's a that's a good way to get repeat business. Just keep making people money.
That's true.
That's kind of cool though that he's able to make it a business. Like he can make it a business. Oh wow. We get another.
The consistency part is what really sells it. It's not just being able to do it once in a while. It's being able to consistently do it.
Yeah. Well, I think what did they say is success rate was like around 50% and chance was like at 20, and you know, I mean that's still a hell of a margin above chance, but it still shows that, you know, it's not a perfect thing, but I think it gives. Maybe it just gives them enough information that they can build so much more on once they know where to point things, you know?
Yeah, I don't think it works all the time.
Yeah.
Like he's trying to sell. I think, like you said, the odds are on, like they say in Vegas, the odds are all in the house, and I think the odds are in his favor. But I don't know that I go dump my life savings on something like that. And from what I understand is with the future, they struggle with it.
Yeah.
Like they can look into the past for things. You know, the problem is that anytime you give a human being power, they just turn into like the worst thing on the planet. I mean, I was sitting here looking. So check this out. This is from the CIA documents that were released. They're wanting to use you see it there, it's underlined.
Yeah.
But use it to physically harm, sicken, or kill individuals. He mentally killed the rat without any contact. But if you go through it, I mean, really what the CIAs want to do is basically spy and, if possible, kill, you know, through this means. And I think that's their end game, you know. And, you know, I'm right there. I mean, I'd be first down, like I said, at the craps table. I'd be like, Black 25. Follow me, everyone.
Yeah, exactly. The train's going. But that is kind of scary, though, when you think about it, that their end game is to be able to, at a whim. And I think there's something like that, oddly enough, isn't that a Scientology, like some of those top level Scientologists say, I can kill you with a thought. I think I've heard that.
I think
You know
that's
what's crazy? Almost all of these guys are Scientologists.
Really?
Almost every single one of them is.
Oh, that is crazy. Wow. I didn't know. Huh. Wonder if that's part of the whole Scientology thing. I mean, I know that the Dianetics is kind of well, I think it has its foundations in the whole, spirits and of aliens, and you need to purify and all that. But I don't know. It's definitely a bizarre religion as far as religions go. But
it's a moneymaker.
It is, yeah. Because as far as I understand it, man, the people that get involved in that, they got to basically sign the dotted line and toe the line for the rest of their deal. But and that's a whole nother bag of worms. But I was actually listening to the Joe Rogan show when he had that lady on there. What's her name? But she was she was into the Scientology so much, and she was a celebrity. She was on TV shows and stuff, but I can't remember her name. But I was listening to that, and it's like, oh my God. So yeah, that's the part of the deal I wouldn't want to be training for. Is it like a Scientology boot camp or recruiting parties?
Yeah, I don't think any of these guys ever actually talk about Scientology, but sure. I found it weird that they're all Scientologists.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It is, but I gotta say that Scientology really does focus on developing your mind, and as far as I understand it, not that I know much about it at all. I guess I have a tabloid understanding of Scientology, but it's weird. But I think that this is something that's been promoted in many religions and esoteric practices around the world. Buddhism, I think, embraces the whole astral projection, as I don't know. I think Hinduism does. I'm not totally sure about that, but I know that a lot of shamanic cultures have dealt with going out of body to view things and stuff. So it's not a new idea. It's been around just about as long as we have, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I think it's strange too, because when they're describing it, if you ever hear someone who had a near-death experience, it's very similar. Or DMT, people that have taken DMT, it's very similar. You're not really there physically, but you are. Wasn't it Einstein that said that energy doesn't go anywhere? It's still there.
It's not created nor destroyed. It is transferred.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that was Einstein, but yeah, that's true.
Oh.
I don't
that
know.
Sounds good. I say we go with that.
Okay, my bad. I don't know.
Survey says Einstein. Ding, 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 ding. All right, we're going with Einstein. But yeah, it is fascinating. We got that one other clip with Ingo. Should we go through that now?
Yeah, I like him. At a few moments, he started losing me, but he's one of those guys that's so nice. He's very sincere.
Okay, where is it now? Where did I lose it?
And this guy was a real deal too. This guy, he was right up there with the best.
Oh yeah. He sounds fascinating. All right, and ladies and gentlemen, this is a clip of Ingo Swann, one of the premier remote viewers ever in this whole program from the government. But let's check it out.
I'd been getting good results, so that gave me a little tiny clout. So they tried some of the things I wanted. And one of the first things I tried was, the typical way of running an experiment, you hook the subject up to a microphone. And the subject then tried to float out of the body and see what they had on these trays up here. You're supposed to float up and look down and report what you were seeing. So the subjects were doing that, and meanwhile, you couldn't move from this chair more than an inch because your brain was hooked up to all these electrodes which were feeding to the wall, to the early Beckman dynagraphs, brainwave recorders, and things like that. So I tried that, and the fact of the matter is, I sometimes only saw shapes or forms, and I didn't know how to put them into words. So I'm thinking about, how do I describe this? And in this process of thinking how I'm going to describe it, I came down from the ceiling and got back into my head, into the left hemisphere, and said, well, how are you going to describe this? So I thought that was a mess. And then even after you dictate this stuff, then it has to be transcribed by somebody else and put on a piece of paper, and then it's given to blind judges, so forth and so on. And this is a whole laborious BS project. So I said, I don't want to talk anymore. I just want to have a piece of paper and I want to draw what I'm seeing. This was not the first time this had happened in parapsychology, because it happened in 1904 too, in some early experiments where some stubborn, they didn't have verbal equipment back then, you know, and things like that. So I said, I'd rather draw it and I don't want to talk anymore. So I started making these little sketches. And these little sketches revolutionized and led the way into what became remote viewing, because wherever it was possible to do so, I encouraged abandoning the verbal method and assuming the visual method, because what's going on in your brain is not words, it's pictures, right? Yeah. You know, the human mind is now being called the fastest computer in existence. Although I think there's some 8-legged water bugs in my building in New York who are faster than me. Have you ever tried to step on one of them? Break your legs trying to do so. So, no, the human mind produces pictures, mental image pictures, and you can sketch those. You don't need to describe them and things like that. Description takes time, you know, and you're moving from the visual mode into the literary mode, and that distorts the signals and everything like that. If you draw things rather than talk about them, actually, you know, there's about 33,000 languages being spoken on Earth at this minute, languages and dialects and everything like that. So somebody remote views the same target, and depending on what language they're using, they have to reconvert those signals into the linguistics that they're using, and then if you want it translated into another language, you've got to find a similar word and a similar word until you get down to the end, and there's nothing left of the signal. Let's take this from a computer point of view. If the computer is not programmed to function accurately every time, what are you going to have? Yeah. Is it going to survive as a computer? All right, so let's say that our sensorium and perceptual systems are acting like a computer. You know, what you're actually accessing is at least very tiny electromagnetic signals. You're not accessing the picture of this woman here. Your eye retinas are accessing an astronomical number of little electronic bits that are forwarded through the eye nerves up into wherever it goes to. And then there's recombined to make a picture of her as you see it. See? I see this lady here has a very powerful energy thing along her spine and up the back of her head here, almost like she's about to be awakened. Or she hopes to be anyway. Do you see that? Do you see that? Well, it's just because something in your system is not functioning to permit those kind of signals to achieve a visual status, you know. Okay, let's imagine that the human sensorium is a big board here. And along this big board are thousands and thousands of little toggle switches. You know what a toggle switch is? They go on and on and on and on, like this and so forth and so on. And let's say you have, well, the brain itself has something like 4 trillion cells in it, so you at least have that many toggle switches, you know. But let's say there's just 1,000. And after you get done with your social conditioning and you're made to fit into the society that you're fitting in with and so forth and so on, of these 1,000 toggle switches, maybe only 3 or 4 of them are still on. All the rest have been switched off. Okay? So your system are still getting the signals, probably the right signals. But if you only have 10 of the toggle switches switched on, the data has to be filtered through those, which might not be interested in that particular data, so you don't get anything. Down here are the super duper psychic toggle switches, which have been closed off because you wanted to fit into a society that doesn't like that. So in theory, anyway, no, we don't get mixed up data. We get the signal, clear and loud. And it's the system that the data has to be filtered through that puts the distortions in it, if anything. I think that if these things are turned off, you're actually destroying part of what we are. Okay? You can get a balanced, controlled society by keeping the majority of people in it as dumb as possible. And then they do what they're told. And they imprint on it too, and they forward it to their offspring, who forwards it on to their offspring, who forwards it on to their offspring, and things like that. I decided quite some time ago, all on my own, that we're over-endowed for mere survival on Earth. Because we have all of these things going for us, and we don't need them to survive just as we're surviving, So we're totally over-endowed. For instance, in Science News, somebody published an article that finally says how many colors the eye can identify. How many do you think? 187? Colors, hues, tones, things? The whole schmear. Yes, ma'am.
There are 360 some different colors of white that the female eye.
Yes, that's right. But how many can the human eye? Your eye does this. Everybody's eyes do this unless you're colorblind. Look at that grammar, would you? Does this. Come on, give me more estimates. No, they give a figure of 248,000 colors that the human eye deals with. Now that's a bit of an over-endowment because we don't need that many. Do we? I mean, we could get along with just black and white. We get along with black and white anyway in many areas. It's either black or it's white. Or, I'm sorry, you're not supposed to use that anymore. It's red or green, let's say. And I says, well, I don't know how they came to that conclusion or what they're thinking, but think of what the sensorium can do. If the eye alone can do this, deal in this multiplicity of things, the human sensorium, if you look at all of the anomalous phenomena that are recorded as anomalous, we're talking about a mega computer of some kind, which is totally unnecessary to even account for evolution on Earth. Evolution can be accounted for on a very simplistic method. But why should evolution have ended up having people, us here, who have thousands and thousands and thousands of activities and little projects and capacities and so forth and so on that we don't even use. And yet we get from birth to the grave without them. See, I can get very emotional about this, although in my age I don't want to be emotional anymore. But it's a fact, I look here and I see all of you not as the physical thing that you are, but as one of the fastest computers in existence, totally equipped to do things that we probably haven't even identified. And you're sitting here being fascinated with this miserable specimen. And I don't know if I'm making sense because you can't make sense if you stay at a simplistic level. You're over-endowed. You're not using 99.9% of what you're endowed with. None of us are. Even little me. And but this is slightly beyond just mere remote viewing and things like that. But I've gone beyond remote viewing. I can't sit around in the early 1970s and say that's the rest of my life or anything like that. So, this is one big answer that might answer a lot of questions because it's my idea that we're just simply over-endowed for what we use. Materialists want to collapse us back to the fact that make us completely believe that we're only material bodies, and the only thing to life is what transpires between birth and death, and you should make the most of it and enjoy it the most. And that is BS, because you're an immortal soul, if nothing else, And you've got to think in these terms here, you know, like I'm already thinking about the next life. I do not want to be educated in a public school here in the United States for one thing. We're an over-endowed species which is victimized consistently by the social surroundings that we're born into. Now, as to what we can use these things for, I don't really know, because you have to first find out what they consist of. But there are three things that we are endowed with which we don't use all the time, and one of them is called empathy. How many people here are empaths? Empathy graduates right away into compassion. How many people here are compassionate? Do you get slapped in the face for it? Yeah. Can't have compassion. It'll destroy our social fabric. Compassion leads immediately into telepathy. Or telepathy leads right back into empathy. How can you be empathic if you're not telepathic to some kind of degree? There are many kinds of telepathy. Did you know that? There's just not one kind. I myself, 25 years ago, made a theoretical list of 136 different kinds of telepathy. Being telepathic with the Dracena is one kind of telepathy, right? Being in telepathic touch with your obstinate son or daughter is, you don't want to talk. This is not a Dracena type of telepathy. This is something else. Being in telepathic touch with ETs, there's a different kind, hypothetically, if it were possible. How many of you here have telepathic empathy with gold deposits buried in the earth? When I was a child, and up in Telluride, Colorado, where I was born, which is a mining town, it was filled full of hopeful miners running around staking claims to find gold. There were people there that came and said, I can sense the gold. And most of them went out and staked a proper claim. And when the gold started coming in, they were also shot dead by other people who wanted to take it over. But I learned that you can sense things. Everything that you can sense requires a slightly different modulation. If you're going to hunt for gold and you're using the silver modulation, you're not going to find a gold. But you might find silver if it's there too. If you're searching for corabundums, those are rubies, emeralds, things like that, and you don't have the proper, as my friend, I can't think of his name right now, Marcel Vogel would have said, your internal piezoelectric crystal is not configured along those lines. And I said, well, can't you just turn it on? He said, yeah, you can turn it on. So this is a toggle switch thing here, and things like that. So we're multifaceted. We have, I don't know, you can't even, you think you might have 10 psychic abilities. Parapsychology used to be able to list only 9. But I can list 136 forms of telepathy alone. And anybody else could too if they just set their mind down to it and say, telepathy is not one just big thing. It's like an all-seeing crystal eye with rays in it, which sends out different kinds of rays, blah, 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 and things like that. So we're trapped in our conditioning, our word conditioning. Parapsychology trapped us in words. Did you know that? Do you know what the word precognition means? Well, they got it up in parapsychology to say that it means seeing the future. But excuse me, pardon my bacon. I'm losing my teeth, so it's touch and go if I can even eat bacon anymore. Precognition, if you look up the word cognition in the dictionary, it says an idea that is realized at the time it's realized. And there's no pre to it. Because if you put a pre to it, then it's an oxymoron. So parapsychology gave us a number of oxymorons, which everybody believes is effective language, right? Yeah. My vision of the future you don't want to hear about because you won't like it. There are some 75,000 nuclear warheads stockpiled on Earth around the planet, when 10 would do the job. You think they're going to sit there and be unused forever? And they're still building them. Weapons of mass destruction are proliferating in every country that's possible to do it. I just found out by reading a certain book last month that the Japanese were already experiencing in biological warfare in the 1920s in Manchuria. And these things, I just published a book called The Wisdom Category, Shedding Light on a Lost Light, which I use the weapons of mass destruction as a scenario that stands between us and the future. And I can't see beyond that. But because I'll see it in my next life, I guess, you know. Whatever you're going to see in your next life, you usually can't see in this one because you're going to see it anyway, so it's a redundant thing. I don't like to talk about what I see about the future because I'm a Virgo, and Virgos are always pessimists, basically. Are you a Virgo too? Are you a pessimist? No. Oh, no. Try to be. Well, if you have to try to be, you're a pessimist. But people, even when I was here, 3 people said, how do I get rid of my blocks? I says, well, why are you thinking in terms of blocks? You know, if you try to get rid of the block, you probably can't because you don't know where the block came from. And so I even wrote a book called Reality Boxes, Another Black Hole in Consciousness, that says people want to change their reality boxes, but you know, they're pretty well imprinted by the time you're 7, the basic ones. And by the time you're 14 and you undergo the sexual awakening and things like that, they become locked in stone or cement, things like that. So if you run around looking for blocks, you're investigating the negative. That's actually what you're doing. And that's okay. I mean, psychologists have made a great deal of money saying this is what we should do. We should find your blocks. Free association for the next 3 years and we might find a block at $180 an hour. Oh, I shouldn't say that either. You know, I'm just so mean. But, okay, it's fine. I don't care if people want to look at their blocks. I look and say, maybe I have a block here, and I look at it too. But what you could look at also is what toggle switch do I need to turn on? And your little subsystems will generate a picture for you sooner or later, even if it comes 3 weeks later in a dream, you know. And it'll be a symbolic, it'll be some kind of a thing like that. And maybe sometimes, if people are good dreamers that have verbal contact in it, and they see, you should have turned this one on when you were 10. That happens, you know. It does. So I don't have all the answers, you see. And what you want is a pat answer that affects just across the board and things like that. But the only thing I can think of that goes across the board is look for the good and wonderful in you versus spending so much time to find out why you're not functioning very well. Both things should be done. I'm not saying that you should abandon looking at the negative because you need to know what that's composed of too. But I can almost prove that most societies suppress searching for what is good in our species and in us as individuals because what is good, if there became too much of it, would upset the social power structures that are in existence. So the way to keep people stupid, even if you make them literate, you know, universal literacy didn't start occurring until 1890. Everybody else was kept stupid, couldn't read or write. If you even make them literate and you focus them on the negative, what's wrong with us, what's wrong with us, what's wrong with us, what's wrong with us, then you spend a whole life wondering what's wrong with us. Well, there's what's good with us too. And I think that deserves an equal amount of attention, just like the skeptics say they want equal airtime. I think the good in us deserves equal airtime. But now I'm being philosophical, and I'm 70, I'm way past the remote viewing stage, I'm way past even interest in my own life, because I got to get ready for the next one. So. Does that make sense? You know, You know, my psychic career, if you want to call it that, started when I was 39 years old. And I thought that I was almost over with then. Well, you know, the dreadful age of 40 was coming up, which is supposed to be the high point before the down point starts, right? Now everybody says I should live to be 120. I should go for that. With this decomposing body, I don't think so. The realization, which took place about 10 years ago, you know, I've been through all this parapsychology garbage and this remote viewing garbage and the government garbage and this garbage and everything like that. I said, well, wait a minute, you know, there's got to be something somewhere that connects as what the alchemists used to call a philosopher's stone. You know, the answer to everything, or something like that. And so I said, well, what would that be? And I must say, that if our species did not have innate compassion toggle switches, we would have ceased to exist long ago. I mean, you can't go through 6,000 years of wars only. There has to be something behind the wars and things like that. And there was a philosopher who I hated for a long time because he was a Marxist. I can't think of his name right now. But he made a quotation, which I put in one of my books, that talked about compassion. And I said, well, that old Marxist, you know, they're not interested in compassion. Marxists aren't interested. They're not supposed to be anyway. And because that's paranormal. Compassion is paranormal. But I think that, yeah, compassion. And from compassion comes all of the things that build and make and strengthen compassion. This doesn't mean you need to go overboard, because you got to get ready for things that might happen to you, you know, things like that. Yeah, compassion. I'd put it up there at the top somewhere. I've been surprised many times, and I don't know how my reality box has dealt with it. And, you know, we all have reality boxes, whether we like it or not. And everything, you know, I just go to bed for 2 weeks, get up and start over again. I got bored with the experiments, humdrum experiments at SRI, and I told Russell and Hal, I got to do something exciting except this blah, 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 you know, things in boxes and so forth and so on. So they said, well, what would you like to do? And I said, well, why don't we try to see if we can visit a planet? I mean, instead of something around the corner. So they agreed they would do that, and they set it up, and I threatened to leave, you see. I mean, you can't, if you're bored with what you're doing, you can't produce good stuff, right? So they set it up, and then they said, send it out to various scientists that it was going to take place, and so forth and so on. It was all prepared. And then the night before I was going to do this, I said, damn, what have I gotten myself into here? And I got raging drunk. I woke up in the morning with a hangover you wouldn't believe, and I had to go in and do this thing. And I drew the pictures very briefly, and I gave a very brief thing here, verbally and so forth and so on. And I said Jupiter had a ring around it, which nobody said was possible, and that there was an inverted greenhouse effect, which people didn't agree with, and they didn't agree with anything I said. And especially I said there are some kind of strange mountains there, which have not yet been discovered, but since then everything else that I said has been confirmed, and it only took 8 minutes to do this. About. Right, Hal? And then I went home and took 10 aspirins. And that's how it came about. The first real feedback didn't come until 7 years later, when a friend of Hal's from JPL called up and he said, you know, we finally found a ring around Jupiter, and Inigo was the first one to discover it. But I did not get to be. If you discover something, you're supposed to be able to name it, right? Well, they just forgot about me. And you know, when people used to come to SRI and visit Hal and everything from Washington and everything, that they wouldn't have lunch with me because they thought I could read their minds. So that says something. If you think about that, that says something.
Well, there you have it. That's really cool. Now, I gotta say, if we can only see 240 some colors or whatever he said the number was, if we can only see that, why the hell do we keep having to get TVs with like 1 million plus colors? What are we doing? Oh, we got 5 million colors in here and 3 million pixels. It's like, okay, great. My brain can only use 240 of those, 1,000 of those. It's like, what the hell? They saw us coming, didn't they?
Oh, unbelievable. Yep.
Yeah,
Bank on you not knowing.
He's kind of I've been having technical issues ever since I started. It's my issue with my camera, but unless you guys want to keep going for a few hours, I could probably have it up here in about 10, 15 minutes.
That's okay.
It's funny because I think it was Kristen in the chat. She was like, this guy creeps me out. That's the first thing I thought too.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you're working for Brent, you got to sit and watch these videos like 1 million times over and then edit it and send it over to him. And I was like, sweet Jesus. But, after I sat and listened to it after about the third time, and I know this guy's background. This guy's had a tough life.
Yeah.
And I know he's gone now, and I hope he's someplace, I hope he's happy wherever he's at.
Yeah.
And you're right, though, Brent. It was Jupiter, not Saturn. And I have the, let's see if I can pull it up on my screen. I have the, it's only one page, though.
Oh.
He went through, there's like 10 pages of this. And he does describe the map. And everything he says, I think except for one thing, has come true.
Wow.
And when they were flying the rover around Jupiter, they had no clue that was even there. NASA actually confirmed like 8 things this guy said about Jupiter. Even with the telescope, you're not going to see what he saw. So I kind of like his take. I have a hard time, I guess in the genres we're in, it seems like whenever people have some sort of ability, they claim to have some sort of ability, they're so egocentric and they're like, I'm the chosen one. I can think of one guy in the Bigfoot world right now that's like that. He only speaks to the council or whatever. But this guy, he's like, everyone can do this. Everyone has access to this. I'm not special.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone can do this. And I think it's easier to take it that way. And maybe it's because I hang out with a lot of weirdos, so this guy doesn't bother me very much. You know what I mean? I kind of think what he was saying was kind of sweet there towards the end, about life and kind of his outlook on life. He may not be wrong. You hear people who have near-death experiences, and you hear about, if you ever get a chance, go listen to some of them. It sounds a lot like this remote viewing. I mean, it's very similar. I mean, obviously it's different. You're going to talk to God or you're going somewhere else, but the semantics behind everything is the same.
Yeah, it's really powerful stuff, man. I'm telling you. Now, the other thing that I thought was neat that he was mentioning was different kinds of telepathy, and I'd never considered that, but that's a really interesting take too, because you hear about people like dowsers, and I think that dowsing, it's not for those of you that may not know, it's like a lot of traditional dowsers will take like a forked certain kind of tree branch and they bend it out and they walk around and like they water douse.
Is that what he was talking about?
No, but he was talking about, well, he also said that you have a gold telepathy, then, you may be able to find gold. But if you got a silver telepathy and you're looking for gold, you'll never find it. And he said you got to figure out which telepathy you have, and then you got to figure out how to open up the other ones or, enable those, essentially was what I took from it. And I'm probably poorly paraphrasing what he said, but I was thinking about dowsers. And, there's different kind of dowsing. There's water dowsing, there's gold dowsing. And some people use the two brass rods and do that. Some people use a tree branch, but I don't think it's the brass rods or the branch that are actually activating that. I bet you it's the person's energy field and that they're able to tune into that stuff. And that kind of bypasses their conscious mind and they're using that telepathy, I don't know, just a thought as I was listening.
Well, even think about this, Brent, how many mothers, I'm sure you've heard this before, where they're like, something's wrong with my child. And you're like, how do you know that?
Yep.
And they're like, just something's not right.
Yep.
And generally they're right. It's like, well, how do you, I mean, you get a text. I mean, how did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure with fathers and, there's a weird connection and there's a lot of things in this life you can't explain. You know, something as simple as that. You know, is that considered psychic?
Sure. I mean, my mom was one of those people. It's funny that you said that because instantly I went back to this, and this is a story my mom told me. But she said I was a little boy, a little child, like probably about a year old or whatever. And it was a real hot summer day. We didn't have air conditioning, so she put my playpen in the garage, and it was nice and cool in there and stuff. So I was sitting there playing with my toys in the garage, and I had little baby toys or whatever. But she was just inside the house, but around a corner in her sewing room sewing. And she said suddenly she got a horrible feeling something was wrong. And she ran out there, and she said I was laying in there blue, gasping, but not able to breathe. And what had happened was I had, I guess, somehow managed to lodge a piece of a toy car down in my throat, and it blocked my airway.
You're one of those kids.
Yeah, I'm one of those kids. I'm the one. Yeah. And she said that she was able to get it out and that, I was fine. But if she hadn't have got that impression just for out of the blue, boom, she's like, knew she had to get there. And good thing she did. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a paranormal portal, folks.
Yeah.
And how did she know? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, how did she, I can't even get my camera working. I mean, how does she know her son's like choking? You know what I mean? It's bizarre.
It's way bizarre, but you're right. I think in that case, sure, it makes sense that there would be a telepathy in essence to your child. At least for many people, and I don't know if it's universally that way, but I'm sure. I'm glad my mom had it.
I got 2 questions for you guys.
What's that?
I'll start with you, Sheldon. If you could remote view, would you do it?
Absolutely.
What about you, Brent?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's fascinating. In fact, it's something that I would be willing to, like we did just in a rudimentary way with those numbers. I would be really interested in testing this out to see if I could pick up anything and then verify it after the fact. I think that's fascinating. Would you?
Yeah.
I don't know. I got a lot going on. I don't got time for that, man. I barely got time to get my mail and mow my lawn and get a show out.
Just think, you might be able to remote view a Sasquatch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be down. I'd be doing something else with it. All right, here's my second question, guys,
Okay.
and let me know if we should write this down and give us some thought.
Okay.
Okay. You have to nuke one state in order to save the rest of the United States. What state do you nuke?
California.
Sheldon.
California. Wow. Sheldon didn't pause. He's like, California.
Oh God, I don't know. That's a tough one. I guess
Hypothetical.
I guess if you had to pick one, I would pick the one that has the fewest people in it, and I don't know which one that is right offhand, but I don't know. That's a horrible thing to have to think about, really.
It is.
Sheldon didn't even bat an eye. He's like, California.
I know. I'm thinking about it like, oh, that was kind of crappy, actually.
Considering we got listeners there, Sheldon, that are in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's a tough question.
And I'm not going to answer that question because I'm not a monster.
Oh, come on.
I think it'd be one of the Dakotas. Although I like the people from the Dakotas, but like you said, Brent, there we are. Pam says North Dakota.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Sorry, people in North Dakota.
That's okay. I'm glad we actually don't have to make that choice. But thanks for the hypothetical, Wes.
Yeah, I like hypothetical.
Yeah. But I tell you what, we did a little over time. And Wes, I thank you so much for coming on the show, man. It's been a blast. And thanks for all of the work you did helping to put this show together and making this happen. This was really cool.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thank you guys for having me on. And I hope everyone in chat liked it. I want to do something a little different. And then I feel bad because I really wanted to do a better presentation, but I had like literally like last second I was able to log in. But if you get a chance, Third Eye Spies, it's free on YouTube too. You can go watch it on YouTube.
Yep.
I'm telling you, by the end of it, you're gonna go, I think this is real.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah.
Like I said when we started the show, when I first considered this, I kind of went with the whole, oh yeah, they played with it, and then they just kind of discarded it. So I never gave it a whole lot of credence. But I firmly believe in people having psychic ability and the ability to see, but I didn't know that it was such an incredibly profound program and that so much came of it in this regard. So yeah, I highly recommend it. And ladies and gentlemen, that link is in the show description on YouTube. So you can just go in the description and click on it and check it out. But it's about 2 hours long, but it's a good 2 hours full of great information and some pretty interesting historical tidbits. So very cool. But
we should do something fun next time.
I agree. Let's do this again.
I guess if you guys will have me back.
Absolutely, man. You're always welcome.
Pretty, I'm like, hey, I'm coming back, guys.
Yeah, we'll have to get Don on the next one so we have the full four pack. Yep.
Let's go 4 of us.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll do it again, man, whenever you want. Just let me know. We'll always have room for you on the schedule.
Perfect. I appreciate it, guys. And thank you, everyone in chat.
All right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for us here on the portal. Hope you guys enjoyed the ride. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all of you who, were able to, be here and be a part of the conversation, to the callers. I appreciate the call-ins. And also, thank you for the birthday wishes. I appreciate that. I
know it was your birthday.
Tomorrow.
Is it today?
No, tomorrow.
Oh,
yeah. I survived another lap around the sun.
You doing anything special for it?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have any closing music. I mean, we can.
You want me to sing you out, Wes? You can sing
you
me
anything special?
You can sing me happy birthday if you want. No, I don't think so. I'm just going to kind of lay low. I'm going to be going out of town in a couple of days, so I got a lot of things to take care of between now and then. So probably just a quiet day, just unwinding.
Isn't it funny once you get past 40, you're like, who cares?
I know.
It's just another,
Yeah, I know. I honestly, I didn't really think about tomorrow being my birthday until I started getting Facebook messages and was like, oh, yeah, that is tomorrow, isn't it? So ever since I don't get cake and presents anymore, I'm just kidding. I'm going to have a cake, I'm sure. But yeah.
Yeah, happy birthday. I'll send you something. You have to send me your address up there. I think you already did, but I'm going to send you something. Happy birthday.
Aw, thank you, brother. All right, thank you. I appreciate that. And that's going to wrap it up for us, guys. Have a great night, everybody. Love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day. And remember to laugh as much as you can. And we'll see you next time. Remember, no live shows this next week and not the following Wednesday either. But then we'll get back to it again. So see you a week from next Friday is what I'm planning on. So for the live show here on YouTube. So check it out. Good night, everybody.
Good night.